You see, people are really strong, and it turns out that if you face problems, you can handle much more than you thought you could. You can even get through it without letting it damage who you are inside. She actually got much better, fully recovered, and that was mostly because of her own decisions. She realized what was wrong and took action to fix it, which to me is nothing short of a miracle. In that section with the cat, I actually begin by talking about our dog, who sadly passed away about a year ago, though in the book he's still alive. I mentioned that because people who love dogs might think cat lovers don't like dogs, and they might not like that. So right at the start, I make it clear it's totally fine if you want to pet a dog on the street too. No one needs to get upset about it. The point I was trying to make is that when you're suffering, you must stay alert and pay attention to the small, beautiful things in life. That's the message I wanted to give through the cat story. Across the street, there's this cat named Ginger. She's a Siamese cat. Cats, technically speaking, aren't really tamed. They're still wild in a way. But for some reason, they seem to like people. Only God knows why. Ginger often comes over to our place. Our dog, he used to look at her, but they were buddies. She'd lie on her back, and he'd nudge her a bit with his nose, and she'd slowly come near if she was in the mood, letting you pet her. Those moments matter, those tiny sparks of beauty in the dark. When things are going bad, you need to look around and find what's still lovely, what still keeps you going. Sometimes you have to narrow your view, appreciate whatever good is still left, and that might help you survive some very dark moments. If you're lucky, it might even work out, but even if it doesn't, maybe it stays just a tragedy and doesn't turn into total hell. And you can manage that even during the worst times, you can stop it from becoming pure misery. There's a huge difference between something being tragic and it being pure hell. At a deathbed, the last thing you want to see is people fighting. Death is already painful enough, but people can take something already terrible and make it even worse. Maybe, and this is kind of what I finish the book with, if we all tried to avoid making bad things worse, we might actually learn to deal with the tough stuff that life throws at us. Maybe then we could turn the world into a slightly better place. That's what we should be trying to do. That's what we can do, and honestly, there's nothing more worth doing. That's the message of the book. That's the end of 12 rules for life. Every time you truly learn something, it's because something you did didn't work. That shows you a part of life or the world that you didn't understand before. When you run into those parts you don't get, you get the chance to reshape the way you see things. That's often why it's more helpful to know when you're wrong than to try to always prove you're right. One of the important lessons you're supposed to get at university is that it might be smart to listen to people who annoy you. Maybe they know something useful, something that could actually help you if you hear it. Talking only to people who think like you do is like walking through a desert. You already know everything they'll say. The only reason to be around them is so you never get challenged, because you're scared that if you step outside your comfort zone, everything will fall apart. But that's not true. People are amazingly able to face and understand new things. In fact, that's what gives life its value. The Buddhists say life is suffering. That's a hard truth, and it makes you wonder, why live at all? People really do ask that, and some end up in terrible places, hurting themselves or others. For example, cruel people, even the ones who commit mass violence, they often hate human weakness so much that they try to destroy anyone who shows it. Others fall into despair and give up completely because they can't handle the pain of life. Suffering is real and it's unavoidable. So the question becomes, what do you do about it? A lot of people don't get what they want simply because they don't clearly figure out what it is. Even worse, maybe what they want isn't actually good for them. But maybe they could find what would be truly good, something even better than what they wanted. Why don't they get it? Because they don't really try. They don't say to themselves, okay, here's what I'd like if I could really have it. And I don't mean forcing the world to give you success or fame. I mean something like this. Imagine you're taking care of yourself like you actually cared. If you really wanted things to go well for yourself, what would your life look like? Most people don't think like that. They don't sit down and say, let me figure this out. Life is hard, but in 3 years, I might have what I need if I'm careful. You can't have everything, but you might get what's really good for you. You just need to decide what that is and aim for it. From my experience, when people figure out what's truly good for them and go after it, they often reach it. It's strange, but true. And even if they don't, they still move closer. Maybe they take a few steps toward a goal and realize they were slightly off, so they adjust. They zigzag a bit, getting better each time. A big reason why people fail is because they never define success in the first place. Since success is a small target, the odds of hitting it by accident are nearly zero. So the idea is, if you really want something, you can have it. But what does really want mean? It means you change your life in every way you can to make it likely to happen. That's a kind of sacrifice. You won't get everything, but maybe you can get what matters, and maybe all you have to do is ask. But asking doesn't mean making a wish. You have to be very serious about it. Take a deep look at your life and say, if I lived properly, what would I aim for? Sit on your bed one day and ask yourself, what dumb things am I doing again and again that mess up my life? And you must really want to know the answer. If you mean it, you'll figure it out fast. It'll shock you. There's a reason the symbol of the ideal Western individual is someone nailed to a cross unfairly and tortured. So what does that mean for us? Well, don't join angry mobs. That just lets you be your worst self and avoid paying the price. It's a horrible idea, so maybe don't do that. There's a deeper idea too. Carry your suffering. Try to be good, so you don't make things worse. That's the truth. I've read a lot about the awful things people have done to one another. It's beyond imagination. You do not want to be someone who causes that. Still, do you have reasons to be bitter? Yes, many. Everyone you love will die, so will you. You'll experience pain. Much of it won't be fair. No wonder people feel bitter. But if you act it out, everything you hate becomes even worse. There's this idea that hell has no bottom, because no matter how terrible things get, someone can always make them worse. So, what can you do? Accept that life is painful. That's always been the message of religion. Life is full of suffering. Who wants to admit that, but think about it? So what do you do in the face of pain? You try to lessen it. Start with yourself. Be someone useful. Get yourself together. If your father dies, don't fall apart. Help plan the funeral. Stand strong so others can lean on you. That's much better. Don't just be a helpless victim. Sure, you are one in a way, obviously, but try to fix yourself anyway. You probably know what you're doing wrong. You might even be able to improve a little. Maybe you're not totally useless, and with each small improvement you'll see more clearly. Then you improve some more. Maybe your family gets better. Maybe they stop fighting as much. That removes some suffering. It also removes your chance to get revenge, which can be annoying. So you get your family a bit more stable. You feel wiser because you've done something genuinely hard. Then maybe you look past your family and try to fix one small thing in the world without messing it up. Our world is complicated. We tell students to go fix it. That's like telling them to fix a military helicopter. Good luck with that. It's not easy. Things are hard to fix. You have to become a very precise tool to do it right. And most of us aren't there yet. That's another idea we get from the West. How do you deal with life's pain? By being a better person. That's the way, but it's hard. It takes real responsibility. If you ask someone, do you want a meaningful life? Then everything they do must matter. That's what meaning means. Every action counts. You carry that weight. Or you can avoid meaning. Then nothing matters. You have no responsibility. You just drift through life, doing whatever gives you a quick thrill. But you'll be lost, stuck with no purpose. So ask yourself, what are you actually choosing? Most people aren't chasing meaning, not really. Why? Because it's hard. You have to accept pain. You have to fix yourself. That's difficult. It's a wonder people even manage it. I'm shocked every day the world isn't just chaos, with fires everywhere. I once knew a guy who got badly hurt in a motorcycle crash. He had a tough time. He worked fixing power lines and helped a guy with Parkinson's. And they had different weaknesses that somehow matched each other, so the two of them together could do the job of one person. And so they're out there fixing power lines in freezing weather, even though one of them was still 3 quarters broken from a motorcycle crash and the other had Parkinson's. disease. It's like that's how our society really works. It's full of people who are damaged in ways you can't even imagine. And still they get up and go to work doing jobs they don't even enjoy, and look, the lights stay on. It's amazing. It really is. It's something like a miracle, and yet we're so unthankful. College students, especially the postmodern ones, are so ungrateful. They don't see that they live in the middle of something like a straight-up miracle. It's amazing that any of this functions at all, and all of us crazy chimps who don't know each other can still sit in one room for 2 hours sweating away without attacking each other, because that's what actual chimps would do. So anyways, what happened was I made some videos, and I tried to get to the root of some things, at least as far as I could go. So I shared with you what I believed was the root of it, and then I had an idea of what someone could possibly do about it. And it's not even my idea, really. It's not like it came from me. It's a very old idea, much older than Christianity. It's ancient. It's like the oldest story we've ever told. Get yourself together, go beyond your pain, try to become a kind of hero, help reduce pain in the world, and that's the best way forward as far as I can tell. If there is any better way at all, the final rule is called pet a cat when you meet one on the street. And it's a very, very personal chapter in the book. It talks a lot about my daughter. My daughter was very sick when she was younger, especially during her teenage years. She had a very rough time with it. She had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And between ages 14 and 16, it first destroyed one of her hips, which had to be replaced. And then it wrecked the ankle on her other leg, which also needed replacing. And she walked around for 2 years with broken legs. She was taking very heavy doses of painkillers and could barely stay awake. And she also had this severe immune system disorder, which caused other symptoms just as painful as the joint issues, but harder to put into words. And it was just brutally hard. And when it comes to testing your belief in anything, few things are worse than watching a child suffer from a terrible illness. So that chapter reflects on that. It also talks about what someone can do when life throws something like that at you, because everyone will face some version of that situation at some point. You'll have to face sickness in people you care about, and you'll be in crisis. And so it's a guide on how to handle times like that. One of the first things to do when you're drowning in crisis is to shrink your time frame. Like, maybe you can't think about what next month looks like, maybe not even next week or even tomorrow, because the present moment is just too much, and that's all you can deal with. So you shrink your focus until it's something you can actually manage. And if you can't picture making it through the next week, try to get through the next day. And if that's too much, focus on next hour. And if that still feels like too much, then just try to get through the next minute. And the real problem inside is, how do you live with tragedy and cruelty? And maybe you say, well, I'm just not ready for that. And that's a fair point, especially if you were sheltered too much as a kid, because it's a bad idea to protect your children too much, since the snakes will find their way into the garden. No matter how careful you are, so instead of trying to keep the snakes away, you teach your child how to fight them, how to cut them up, and build something useful from the pieces. And that's the real secret to human strength in the face of pain and evil. It's strength, not shelter. It's a completely different way to see it. And we know this from psychology too. We know that when we treat people with exposure therapy for agoraphobia, which is basically fear of the unknown or the world itself, we don't make them less scared, we make them braver. And that's not the same thing, because with someone who has agoraphobia, here's what happens. They never really think deeply about death or pain. They're naive, right? Those things don't show up in their minds because they've always been protected. But then something happens, and this usually hits women in their 40. Since they're most likely to develop agoraphobia, they've lived their whole life with someone keeping them safe. Maybe they had a protective dad, then a protective boy, and then a protective husband, and maybe they allowed that because they felt safer that way, but in exchange they stayed weak and dependent. Maybe that was the only way they could keep the protection going, but the cost is they don't get strong enough, and then life throws something big at them. Maybe they start getting weird heartbeats, possibly from menopause, and then they think, oh no, maybe I'm dying. And who do you turn to about that? There's no one who can protect you from that. Or maybe a friend gets divorced or a sibling passes away, and suddenly death is right there, and the old safety net doesn't work anymore. And then they start having panic attacks. They go outside. They feel their heart racing. They get scared of the heartbeat itself because they think, I'm dying and I'll embarrass myself doing it. And then two fears hit them at once, fear of dying and fear of looking like a fool. And then the panic sets in full blast like a broken flight response. It's awful. And then they start avoiding the places where they had those panic attacks. and then they can't go anywhere, and now the big monster is back, a small victim facing a huge threat. So what do you do now? Well, there's no turning back now. They've lost the innocent view of life. They've seen danger up close. There's no pretending the world is safe anymore, because it's clearly not. And if you ever thought it was safe, you were just living in a bubble that your culture gave you as a gift. And now that bubble is popped, so what's next? Well, the only option is to step back until you find a place small enough that you can handle and start building again from their house. And there's nowhere for you to go. You're like a completely frozen rabbit right there. And your life is terrible because you can't do anything. The other option is let's slowly take apart the things that scare you. Let's show them you carefully and step by step. And then you'll realize that you're actually braver than you thought you were. You never knew that before, and maybe you didn't want to accept the responsibility because you know sometimes people play a part in their own downfall in a way when you had a chance to go out and try things or stay back because you were scared. You picked staying back because of fear. So it's not just that you were kept too safe a lot of the time. It's also that you were okay with using that safety as an excuse, and you'd run back to it anytime you could. So maybe you're a kid at the playground and you're having a hard time with some other kids, and deep down you kind of know, I should try to sort this out on my own, but instead you go and get your mom and ask her to step in, and you already know that isn't really the right thing to do. You know you're going against what expected, but it's the easier path. And so that's what you choose. You go run to some authority and hide behind the powerful parent figure, right? Sort of like that. Well, the problem is then you don't figure out how to do it by yourself, and later in life you'll have to painfully learn it again, maybe when you're already 40 years old. So then what you do is take people and say, all right, what are the things that scare you most? Let's make a list from 1 to 10. So 10 is the least scary out of the group. Pick 10 things that scare you, and number 10 is the one that scares you the least. So let's start there. Okay, maybe you say you're scared of elevators. All right, let's look at a photo of an elevator. Let's have you think about being inside one. Let's walk over to a real elevator and watch the doors open and close, those big metal jaws of doom, because that's how your brain is reacting to it, right? That's what it feels like deep inside, and you do that from as close as you can manage. You go do it and see it actually works. You're super anxious, especially before you do it. You're shaking maybe, but you go, you stop, and you watch, and you calm down. And if you do that like 10 times, it doesn't scare you anymore. Well, now what you learned is not only that you didn't die, but even more than that, you found out that you're strong enough to face something that feels like death. That's the real lesson. And then you take a step closer, and then another, and finally you're standing in what is no longer just an elevator from how you saw it before. It's not a tomb anymore, right? It's not this box of isolation and fear. You realize how I can actually handle this, and then you're more put together, and you feel more confident. And what often happens from that is, I've seen this many times, when someone goes through a process like this and becomes stronger, they also start speaking up for themselves around others in ways they never dared to before, because before they wouldn't stand up for themselves since they didn't want to risk losing the protection. See, if someone's looking after me, I can't upset them because I need that protection, and if I'm going to keep playing that role of hiding behind them, then I can't go against them either. So that's a bad trade. And that's also sometimes why you see people, especially men, still deeply scared of what their father thinks even when they're in their 30s or 40. It's like, well, why is that? Because they're still trying to keep that shield from their dad, so they avoid upsetting him. They don't want to risk breaking the support or the approval they still depend on. So they never challenge his views. They don't stand up to him, not because they agree, but because they're afraid of what happens if they do, and so their growth is blocked. They're stuck in that old pattern, and it keeps them from moving forward in a real way because they never made that break and never said, okay, I can stand on my own even if I don't have this person's constant backing anymore. That's not easy to do, but it's needed. Otherwise, you're just stuck hiding and hoping nothing shakes the situation. And you're not really living, you're still just acting like that same scared kid to believe that there's someone out there who understands. And so they're okay with accepting submission because it doesn't push them to question the belief that there's someone out there who truly knows. That's the comfort of having your father as the judge, right? Because he supposedly knows. But what if he doesn't? What if no one understands things better than you? Well, that's a hard thing to realize. Until you really see that, you're not fully grown up. That's actually the moment you become an adult, when you finally accept that nobody knows better than you what's best for your life. It's a tough truth because honestly, what do you know? It's a scary idea. A lot of people would rather stay mentally tied down, stuck forever to the idea of a great father figure who knows everything. And that's completely understandable. But the downside is that you're much more than you think. If you keep hiding behind that big figure, you never get the chance to discover how much potential you really have, way more than you imagine. Maybe you have enough in you to face the fear of dying without falling apart. Maybe even enough to face evil without breaking. Who knows? It's definitely possible, and it's not just a theory. This is exactly the kind of question therapy deals with. It always comes down to this question, and often the answer is yes, because people can become incredibly strong. You see that in people who work in emergency rooms or hospitals, or those in hospice care, or people who work in funeral homes. These folks deal with harsh realities every day. Or maybe they're police officers investigating awful crimes against kids. These people face terrible things often. These jobs are very tough, but people still do them. Some even handle those roles without serious damage, though that's harder. Because sometimes what you see is so horrible, it never leaves your mind. The truth is, yes, you're under pressure, you're treated unfairly, you're weighed down, who knows why. Maybe you're too short or not as attractive as you'd like. Maybe your grandparent was basically a servant. Chances are they were, since most people's ancestors were. Maybe you're not as smart as you hoped. Maybe you have a sick family member. Maybe your health isn't great. Honestly, you're kind of a wreck and life hits you from all sides. Your body, your past, even all of history seems like it worked against you. It's true, but the problem is exactly that it's true. So if you focus only on being oppressed, you have to keep dividing people up. Break it down again and again. You're a woman, okay. You're a black woman. All right, a black woman with 2 kids, fine. A black woman with 2 kids, and one has a disability. Now you're more oppressed. Or maybe you're a Hispanic woman with a brilliant child who can't afford college, and you struggled just to get legal papers, and your husband drinks too much and hurts you emotionally. That's bad too. And then we say, all right, let's fix every part of this for every person. We'll handle all your struggles, then yours too. But the problem is, no, we can't. We just can't. It's not possible. First, you can't even name all the ways you're suffering. Second, how would we compare them all? Third, who gets to decide what's worse than what? That's the key question. Who decides? In the West, the answer has been, let the market decide. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's actually a bad solution, but it might be the best we have. So we hand the problem off to the market. You bring your troubled self, and you try to offer me something I might want. I bring my troubled self, and I decide if I'll trade you money, which is really just a promise, for that thing. In that exchange, all of your pain is built into the price, and all my pain is wrapped into my willingness to pay. It's not a perfect system. It's flawed, but compared to the rest, it works better. That's why even 10% of us get to live with freedom. There's something profound about this. You have to divide oppression down to the person. That's what Western culture figured out. Look at the key figures in our myths. People criticize me for talking about religion, but I know a few things about stories and faith. It's not by accident that our main cultural symbol is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and left to suffer. Exactly, that's the image. So what do you do in a world like that? I thought about it a long time. The answer isn't join some angry crowd. That just makes people act worse without paying the price. That's not a solution. Let's not do that. There's a deeper idea in the West. You pick up your pain, carry it, and try to be decent so you don't make it all worse. That's truth. I've read a lot about the awful things people have done. Things you can't even picture, so no. You don't want to become someone like that, but do you have reasons to? Sure, plenty. Everyone you love will die. You will too. There's going to be a lot of pain. Much of it won't be fair, of course you're upset. But try acting out that resentment. Watch what happens. You'll make everything even more terrible. There's a reason hell is called a bottomless pit. Because no matter how bad it gets, someone like you can find a way to make it worse. So what now? Accept that life is pain. That's what religion has always said. Life is suffering. Yes, who wants to admit it, but it's true. So what do? You try to make it hurt less. Begin with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself sorted out for real. So when your dad dies, you don't fall apart in a heap. So you can help arrange the funeral. so you can be strong enough that others can lean on you. That's something. Don't just be a victim. Yes, you are one, obviously, but do something about it. Clean yourself up. You know how. You know what's broken in you if you're honest. There are a few things you can tweak right now, even if you're still a mess. Start there, then your eyes open a little more, and you clean yourself up more. Then maybe you can help fix your family. Maybe they don't have to stay so bitter and broken. Maybe Christmas doesn't have to be a disaster. You work on yourself gently because you're a big project. Then you wonder, can you make peace with your difficult brother? Probably not. He's as foolish as you are. So how will you manage that? Still, maybe you make some progress. Your family starts to function again. It eases a bit of pain, though you also give up the fun of revenge, which is tough. But if your family pulls together a little and you get wiser by doing hard things, then maybe you reach out beyond your house. Try to fix one small thing in the world carefully, because society is complicated, and we tell young people they can fix it all. Really? Go try to fix a fighter jet and see how far you get. It's not that easy. You're like a monkey with a tool, swinging it around, hoping something good happens, but it doesn't. Fixing things is hard. You have to be skilled like gold to fix things right, and you're not yet. That's another key idea in the West. How do you face life's suffering, not just in the West? Many traditions say the same thing. The answer is, become a better person. That's how, but it's not easy. It needs real responsibility, and maybe if you told someone, want a meaningful life, then everything you do matters. That's the definition. If it means something, it matters, and then you carry that weight. Or would you rather ditch meaning altogether? Then nothing matters, so you don't need to carry anything. You can just go with whatever impulse comes next, but how long is that satisfying? Then you're stuck in a world with no meaning, but hey, no burdens, so what do you choose? Ask yourself which one you're really chasing. You'll see that most of you isn't chasing meaning. Why? Because it's hard. You have to look life's pain in the face and still stay strong. That's not easy. Honestly, it's amazing anyone does it. I walk outside and think, wow, it's not chaos out here. That's amazing. Could easily be a riot, but people keep it together. I knew a guy. He got badly hurt in a motorcycle crash. It messed him up. He worked fixing power lines. His partner on the job had Parkinson's. They both had different problems, but together they made one full worker. Out in the cold, fixing things, keeping lights on. That's how society runs. So many people out there, totally damaged in ways you can't imagine, still get up and work. Even in jobs they hate. Yet things keep working, the lights stay on, it's unbelievable, it's a miracle, and yet we're so ungrateful. College students, full of postmodern anger, they don't even see it. They don't know how incredible it is that everything still works, that we can all sit in one room without hurting each other. Chimps don't do that. So, what happened with me? I made videos. I tried to dig deep into big questions. And I think I found some bottom truths, not all new. It's not even my idea. It's an ancient idea, way older than Christianity. It's the oldest human story. Fix yourself. Go beyond your pain. Try to be a hero. Try to reduce the suffering in the world. That's the path forward, if there's one at all. When I was about 25, I weighed only around 138 pounds. I smoked a lot, drank too much. I grew up in this rough place up north called Fairview, Alberta. Long winters, tough people. Most of my friends dropped out of school early, started working rough jobs. We drank a lot. I started drinking at 14. I had many bad habits, wasn't in good shape, but I always thought a lot still do. Around 1984 or so, I decided to change. I quit smoking. Though it took time, I had to quit drinking too, just to stop smoking. I started exercising, started sports, which I'd never done. I was a small kid, skipped a grade, so team sports weren't my thing. But I skied, camped, went with my dad into the wild. When I reached grad school, I started swimming. My first real workout was a swim fitness class. Don't want to be poor or struggling with poverty when you're 70, so I just don't understand what's happened to the universities. I can't believe that on your first day there, they don't just tell you straight, listen, you're here for something important. You're here on a mission. You're going to push your ability to express yourself to a level you never thought possible. You'll come out of here so capable that nothing will stop you. You'll be able to do whatever you decide. That's the real reason you're here. But instead, they teach you that the world is this terrible, unfair place, and you're probably stuck at the bottom with no real way out, except maybe by complaining about the system or trying to tear it down. It's so weak and sad that universities think that's what students need to hear. I'm honestly embarrassed for them. I've said it publicly. Parents should think about sending their sons to trade school instead, because at least there, they'll learn practical skills. And that's a painful thing for me to say, because I truly believe that learning to speak and think at the highest level is one of the best things you can do for yourself and for society. So why have universities lost sight of that? It's because of this postmodern neo-Marxist mindset that's taken over. It's all about resentment, victimhood, and group identity. It's chaos, really, Dr. Peterson. I think a lot of students here would agree that one of the main goals of college, especially at a place like Harvard, is to build our ability to express ourselves, to read and think deeply. But what comes after that? Here, there's a big question people ask: what's the good life? What does it mean to use these skills once we graduate? What do we do then? You stop unnecessary suffering. That's what you do. That's your mission, you ask. What do I do after I finish college? Well, if you come out of this place with strong skills and the power to communicate, people will offer you more chances than you can count. I've worked with highly skilled, incredibly sharp people across many areas in my life, and here's what I can tell you about them. They're not selfish, and they're not greedy. One of their greatest joys is finding other smart, capable people and helping open doors for them. They love doing that because for someone who's accomplished, there's not much better than helping someone else rise up. They'll say, "Hey, I've got something for you. Go do your best." And when that person succeeds, it's like, yes, another win for both of us. But some people think successful folks want to hoard all the success and keep others out. That's just not true. That's completely wrong. You don't even need to worry about what you'll do after college if you've really built yourself up into who you could be, because there will be people eager to work with you. There's always a shortage of people who can think clearly and speak well. And don't say, "Oh, nobody's going to want me." If you figured out who you are and built real skills, people will want to work with you. The world will offer you chances. You just have to be ready to take them, earn that place. That's what your parents want for you, and deep down you want it too. We all want to become the best version of ourselves. Men want that in women, and women want that in men. People want someone strong, capable, and confident. Our highest human ability is speech. It's a kind of divine gift, and there's nothing stronger than that, not even close. If you don't believe in the power of that, your thinking is off. And I don't get how you could lack faith in it if you're sitting here at Harvard. You're already on top of the world, so earn it. Use what you have. Go out and fix things. The world has a lot that needs fixing. What you should do is take on so much responsibility that you can barely handle it. Then you'll get stronger trying to manage it, and you won't be asking questions like, "What should I do with my life?" or "What's the meaning of all this?" The answer will become obvious. At the very least, you can say this: there's more suffering in the world than there should be, and I could probably help reduce that, and you can, so go do it. If you do, the world will hurt a little less, and when you're 80 years old, you'll be able to look back and say, "Yeah, I made things a bit better than they would have been otherwise." You don't need some grand sense of purpose or even belief in God to see that as a good thing. I think it actually goes deeper than just solving problems. I believe this world has something higher, something beyond what we can measure, but even if you don't agree with that, it doesn't matter. You still know deep down that making things better is the right thing. That's why I admire people like Bill Gates. He's working on ending 5 major diseases at the same time. He's going after polio, malaria, just trying to wipe them out. So if you're asking, what should I do with my life? Look at what he's doing. Try something like that. That's a good path. Now, if you take a person and help them face the things they fear or avoid, things they know they need to overcome in order to reach their goals, they get stronger. You can teach people to stand up to their fears, and they'll grow from it, and you never really know how strong they can get. Ask yourself this: for the next 10 years, if you stop avoiding the hard stuff and instead do what you know you should, according to your own values, where would you end up? There are people out there who do this, people who spend decades figuring out who they really are and what they're capable of. They keep pushing themselves, and they get stronger and stronger. And we don't know where the limits are. We really don't. So maybe, just maybe, part of the reason your life feels overwhelming is because you're not living up to who you could be, and deep down you know it. That's hard to face, but it's also hopeful, because it means there's another path. There's another way to see and live in the world that might reflect something better back to you. And think about what would happen if more people did that. We've already done so many incredible things as human beings. I've said before today alone about 250,000 people will escape extreme poverty. Around 300,000 more will gain access to electricity for the first time. These are real, amazing changes. They're signs that we're moving forward. You don't need to change the whole world overnight, but if you start with yourself, you'll be amazed how far that ripple can go. Take the responsibility, face what scares you, speak the truth, learn to say what you really mean, and see what kind of person you become when you do all that. Because when people do that honestly and consistently, the world around them begins to change, and sometimes in very big ways. Connected to the electrical power system, we were helping lift people out of poverty together faster than ever before in human history, by a huge amount, and this has been happening unbelievably fast. Since the year 2000, the United Nations had a goal to cut poverty in half between 2000 and 2015, and it was actually achieved by 2013. Sure, inequality is growing in many areas, and you often hear political talk about that, but overall, life is improving for everyone, and that's an amazing thing. We truly don't know how much faster we could grow that improvement if people got serious and truly aimed for it. From what I've seen, people are operating at only about 51% of their full potential. You can even think about this for yourself. I often ask college students how many hours they waste each day or week. The usual answer is something like 4 to 6 hours a day. Time lost to unfocused studying, watching videos on YouTube that they not only don't enjoy, but that make them feel bad after watching. That's probably 4 hours gone right there. Now think about it, 20 to 25 hours a week wasted. That's about 100 hours a month, which equals 2.5 full work weeks. That's half a year's worth of work weeks every year. If your time is worth $20 an hour, which is a very low guess, it might really be closer to $50 if you count future earnings. Then wasting 20 hours a week means losing $50,000 a year, and this is happening to you right now. Since you're young, wasting $50,000 a year is a much bigger problem than it would be for someone my age, because I don't have nearly as many years left. So if your life isn't what it could be, you might ask yourself, what would happen if you just stopped wasting the chances you already have in front of you? Who knows? You might become way more productive, 10 times more, 20 times more. That's the Pareto principle. You just don't know how much more productive, highly efficient people can be. It's beyond what we can imagine. Now, think, what if we all pulled ourselves together and simply stopped making things worse? That's another problem. Many people don't just fail to make things better. They actually go out of their way to make things worse. Out of anger, pride, jealousy, dishonesty, or even hatred, people deliberately make things worse. Sometimes those negative traits all mix together into one very unhealthy mindset. But if people stop doing that, if they just stop trying to make things worse, think about how much better things might get just from that alone. There's this strange pattern in human life that has to do with our own weaknesses, how we're judged by others, and how often people fail to take on the responsibilities they know they should. That's what's really interesting. I often ask students, do you believe people have a conscience? That little voice or feeling inside your head before you do something you know is a bad idea. It tells you not to do it. You don't have to listen, of course, but you usually go ahead and do it anyway, and then what your conscience warned you about actually happens. That makes you feel even worse than if it had just happened randomly, because you knew it was going to happen. You had a clear warning and still chose to do it. And the strange thing is that inner voice, your conscience, it works in people, but we don't really understand what it is. So think, what would happen if you followed that voice for 5 years or 10? What kind of life might you be living? What kind of family could you have? What kind of relationship could you build? I can tell you one thing. Any relationship built on who you really are is going to be stronger and more meaningful than one built on a fake version of yourself. Of course, that means your partner has deal with all of you, your strengths and your flaws, and that's a hard thing to balance. But if you do manage to work through that honestly, then you have something real. You have a solid place to stand in life. You have a home, a meaningful life, and that's also a good foundation if you decide to bring children into the world, because then you can have a true relationship with them instead of unintentionally making them suffer, which sadly happens in way too many families. But there's more. That's why I wanted to talk about social networks and how they rate people, because it's not just your own future that depends on whether you get serious about your life. It's also the future of everyone you're connected to. Think about it. You might think there are over 7 billion people on this planet. I'm just one small person. What difference does it make what I do? But that's the wrong way to think, because you're not separate. You're right in the middle of a network. You're one connection in a big system. That's even more true now with social media. You'll know at least 1,000 people in your lifetime, and each of them will know 1,000 more. That puts you one person away from 1,000,000 and 2 people away from 1,000,000,000. That's how connected you really are. So everything you do sends out ripples like dropping a rock in a still pond. Those waves move outward and affect people in ways you can't even see. That means the things you choose to do or choose not to do matter way more than you think. And if you start living like that, really believing that your actions matter, that's when things get serious, of course. That's scary. Because it means your actions now actually matter. You can't hide behind the idea that nothing you do changes anything, but you might say, well, that's better than living a life with no purpose. And yes, it is better for things to matter. But still, if you really stop and ask yourself, would you take that path if given the choice? You could choose a life with no responsibility, but also no meaning, or a life where everything matters, but you must carry the weight of that responsibility. That's not an easy choice. It's not clear that everyone would choose meaning. People who don't believe in anything, nihilists, they suffer a lot because they think life has no meaning, but they still suffer. The only benefit they get is they don't have to carry any responsibility. That's the trade-off. And honestly, I think that's the real reason behind it. They say, I can't help being like this. All my beliefs are gone. Maybe, but maybe you let them go because it's much easier than living them out. Sure, you feel pain, but you can complain about that and get sympathy. You can take on the role of a victim, and that's actually not such a bad deal, especially when compared to the hard work of living properly with honesty and strength. Take Solzhenitsyn, for example. He's not the only one, but he's one of the best. What he discovered, and what many others in the 20th century also found out, is this. If you live in a messed up way, you help create a messed up society. If enough people do that, you get real hell on earth. Read his book, The Gulag Archipelago, if you're brave enough. That book will show you what true hell is like, and then you can decide if that's the kind of world you want to help create. That's a place you might want to visit, or even more than that. It's a place you'd want to visit and bring your whole family and friends to. Because that's what happened in the 20th century. If you feel hungry, it's not just a basic drive that controls you, it's more like a small part of your mind that has its own goal, and then it uses a bunch of actions to help you reach that goal. It also uses a group of thoughts that match with that goal, and it organizes your feelings around it. And thinking of it as a small personality is actually a much smarter way to understand it. Here's another thing about Skinner's rats. You know, Skinner trained rats to do all sorts of things, and he gave them food as a reward, so he used a simple model of a rat. But those rats were kept at 75% of their usual body weight, so they were very hungry. Not only that, but they were alone. They weren't the usual social rats, and they were bred differently from wild rats, plus they weren't as complex as regular rats because they were starving, and yet a starving rat still works as a pretty good model of how a rat acts, and a rat is not a bad model of how a person behaves. But many of the models we have about basic learning and behavior came from experiments on starving and lonely rats. Anyway, let's talk about how to think about motivation. Think about it from the point of view of the hypothalamus. So we might say that motivation helps set goals, and that emotions show how well you're doing on the way to those goals. And I'm going to use that idea even though it's not perfectly accurate. So we say motivation decides where you're going to aim. For example, if you're hungry, your aim is to find something to eat, and that goal will shape what you notice around you. You ignore almost everything else and focus only on the things that help you move toward food. When you find those things that help you move forward, you feel good as you make progress in the world and notice that things are lined up to help you get what you want. Those things give you good feelings. But if something blocks you, then that gives you bad feelings, and it could feel like danger because something unexpected showed up, or it could feel like anger, so you try to push it out of the way, or it might feel like frustration or sadness. And if the thing stopping you is really serious, It could make your whole little motivational plan fall apart. For example, if you go downstairs and a wrecking ball has destroyed your kitchen, you're not just going to keep making a sandwich in the middle of the rubble. That small goal just got completely wiped out, and now you need a new goal. And one of the things we're going to try to figure out is, how do you know when the problem you hit is so big that you should stop and try something else? Because that's not always easy to figure out, and it's really easy to keep going even when it's not helping anymore, so we don't exactly know how people make that decision. It's a really hard thing to understand, so we'll work on that too now. Your hypothalamus creates small goals that are very close to your biological survival, and that builds a kind of mind. So it's not just a goal or a drive or a set of behaviors, it's like a little personality. And that personality has its own way of seeing things, its own ideas, its own way of noticing and acting on things, all of that. And you can really see that in addiction more clearly than in many other things. One thing you notice with people who are addicted to alcohol, for example, is that they lie a lot, and that's because they've built this small alcohol-based personality inside themselves, or maybe it's a huge part of their personality, like 90%. And that part includes all the excuses they've used over the years to explain their addiction to themselves and to others, so the addiction becomes like a personality on its own. And if someone's addicted to something stronger like meth, for instance, the addiction becomes even more powerful, and then say anything to reach their goal of using the drug, and those words can be lies. And it doesn't matter, because for that small personality, the words are just tools to get the drug. And once they get it, and use it like taking a hit of meth, they reward all those excuses they used to get the drug. And that makes them even better at lying next time. So okay, we're going to say that motivation sets goals, but it's better to say that it creates a whole way of understanding things, and we'll think more about that structure of understanding, then feelings show up inside that structure. So that's how it works. The world has to be seen in a certain way. Motivation creates that way of seeing, which includes goals, feelings, thoughts, and actions. And then your actions help measure how you're doing. Feelings like happiness mean you're going the right way toward your goal. And if something unexpected shows up, you stop. That's anxiety. It means, wait a second, we're not where we thought we were, so now we don't know what to do. So the best thing is to stop, because we're confused and don't know our place. And then more serious bad feelings like pain might make you run away, so feelings tell you whether to go forward, stop, or get out. That's how feelings work inside that motivational system. And that shows how your mind is tied to your body, because feelings are really linked to how you act, and thinking of them as linked to action is the right way, because in the end everything is about action. So what are the basic motivations? Most of them are managed by the hypothalamus, and that tells you just how powerful it is. The other interesting thing about the hypothalamus is that it sends strong messages up through the brain like thick tree trunks, but the messages coming down to control it are more like thin vines. So you can sort of control it as long as it's not too active, but if it's strongly active, it will take over. So part of the trick to avoid letting your hypothalamus take over is to never be in a situation where it has to act. For example, don't go into a biker bar, because you might suddenly need to fight to defend yourself. You probably don't want that. You don't want panic or terror or wild aggression, or to have to run for your life, so just avoid places where that kind of reaction might be needed. And a lot of how we manage our feelings is by staying away from situations where we need to feel it. That has less to do with inner control and more to do with not going where you don't belong. So okay, what are the main motivations? Hunger, thirst, pain. Though pain comes from another brain area, not the hypothalamus. Anger or aggression, keeping body temperature normal. Panic and escape, the need for closeness and caring. Sexual attraction, curiosity, and fun. And you can kind of group those two into categories. Darwin talked about, you could say there's one group of motivations linked to keeping yourself alive, things like hunger, thirst. And then there's another group linked to staying safe, things like pain, anger, temperature control, fear, and running away. And then there's a group of motivations related to reproduction, like forming relationships, caring for others, and sexual desire. And I placed curiosity and fun a bit outside these groups, because I think they help both areas almost equally.